Watch this.
The numbers back it up. Vaccines are slowing the spread of COVID-19, and fewer Idahoans are dying because of it. Still, some are having to go to the hospital, and most have one thing in common. Idaho's housing market has been doing a pretty good job of, marketing itself. But one property owner in Sun Valley can't seem to get any bites. They're hoping an upcoming conference and this catchy sign will turn their fortunes around. Where were you 20 years ago? One man was learning he was about to get his life back, freed from Idaho's death row by a new technology. The sailors assigned to the USS Idaho are in town this week, and yeah, they've learned some things about the Gem State, but not everything. It's certainly been a nice change of pace over the last few months to see COVID and vaccine numbers in Idaho trending in the right direction. Encouraging to see increasing vaccine numbers, decreasing case counts, especially compared to where we were a year ago. The Gem State, though, still has, a ways to go. About 52% of Idahoans 18 and over have had at least one COVID vaccine dose, leading to questions about the circulation of the virus. Experts have said for months the vaccines available, they're highly effective, and it's recommended that a large majority of people do get it. As Idaho medical experts tell Joe Paris, recent numbers on the case count front fully illustrate the benefits of getting a COVID vaccine. Plain truth, we got a long way to go in getting more complete community coverage.
Despite a widely available vaccine, Idaho is seeing one of the lowest vaccine rates among adults in the country.
Idaho is currently just under 50% of our adult population being fully vaccinated, which admittedly is 10% points below the national average. And we see higher vaccination rates among older adults than young adults and teens. And frankly, it varies considerably by community.
Deputy State Epidemiologist Dr. Catherine Turner says there is a data point that clearly shows why it's so important to get a vaccine. Vaccine status of recent COVID cases and deaths.
Nearly all of the deaths since January 1st have been among people who are not fully vaccinated when they become ill. And more specifically, since May 1st, looking at our data, 95% of all the deaths are among people for whom we have no record of them being fully vaccinated before their illness onset.
It's really important that anybody out there that got their first shot and then didn't follow up to get their second, they need to get their second one, especially with Delta.
Dr. David Pate is an Idaho medical expert and retired CEO of the St. Luke's Health System. Pate says with studies showing increasing cases of the more contagious COVID Delta variant in our region, getting fully vaccinated is crucial, especially for people that are fully embracing weaker COVID protocols.
Things that people got away with, and unfortunately, I think this may have emboldened some people that, they were out with other people, they never got infected to their knowledge, and they may be thinking, well, the same thing's going to happen. That's not necessarily true with Delta.
With concerns about Idaho vaccine rates and new variants, the Gem State is reporting very few breakthrough cases. Those are confirmed cases of COVID in people that are fully vaccinated. Now, experts say that fact is another reason why they're encouraging anyone eligible to get vaccinated.
It's less than 0.05% of, all of the people that have received the vaccine have ended up becoming infected.
To see that we're having rare breakthrough cases, not the least bit surprising. In fact, the only thing I'm surprised about is that we're not seeing more than we are, which I think is another signal that this vaccine is highly, highly effective, really surprisingly so.
Experts say if you're enjoying fewer COVID restrictions and you're not vaccinated, the best way to help continue that is to get the vaccine if you're eligible. Simply put, every vaccinated person helps the greater cause in the battle against COVID.
Would we like to see higher vaccine rates? Absolutely, because the variability among people choosing to receive the vaccine means that we'll continue to see hotspots of transmission. We'll see clusters popping up.
Certainly what we've learned with this Delta variant is that unlike the previous ones, where one shot gave you quite a bit of protection, we're not seeing nearly so much protection with only one shot of the two-shot series.
The bottom line is that a vast majority of the deaths, hospitalizations, and cases since May 1st have been among people who have no record of being fully vaccinated.
Vast majority. We were talking, or you just mentioned 18 and older when you talk about vaccines. It's approved for 12 and above. What are we talking about when it comes to 12 and under?
Right, so we're still waiting for a vaccine or even a test vaccine to come out for people under the age of 12. And when I was talking with Dr. Pate earlier today, the hope is that as we get closer to the fall, maybe towards September, Brian, there will be a vaccine available, or at least something with emergency use authorization. Until then, though, people who are not able to get the vaccine, i.e. those under the age of 12, they don't have the same protection as the people over the age of 18. So, Brian, health experts are saying if you have kids and you're not vaccinated, they say they really recommend you getting it to protect them, continuing to mask if not, because the bottom line is the virus is still out there and children are susceptible to it. So they're asking families to do everything they can to make sure kids stay healthy, especially heading into the school year.
And we're still learning a lot about it as time moves on. All right, thank you very much, Joe. It was this time last year, I should say, COVID-19 cases really began to spike in Idaho. July of 2020 was the start of what would become Idaho's second surge of COVID-19. On this day, 1 year ago, Health and Welfare reported a total of 319 new and probable cases. That would turn out to be a pretty mild day considering. Idaho broke its daily case count record 5 times during the month of July 2020. 401 cases reported on July 3rd, 487 on July 7th, 500 on July 10th, and 727 on July 15th. That was a record that stood until, well, middle of October. July was also the first month Health and Welfare began releasing daily updates on COVID cases, something they have since stopped doing. Our last update from Health and Welfare came on Friday. 83 new and probable cases were reported, and we expect to get another one that will include Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. That's coming up today within the hour. Well, since the vaccine rollout began in January of this year, 666,000 Idahoans now considered fully vaccinated. Another 54,000 have had at least one dose. The two-dose vaccine, meaning 720,000 have had some form of the shot. And that means a little more than half of those who are eligible to get the shot, well, they have, as you heard Joe mention, 52%. 195,000 contracted COVID according to the state. That's 1 out of every 10 in Idaho. 2,158 people have died because of COVID. Some perspective on that, since that's about the city size of Parma. For a lot of people looking to relocate to the Gem State, well, it's slim pickings out there in terms of the real estate being offered. When a home is listed, home or property is listed, typically it's snatched up rather quickly. That hasn't been the case, though, for one Blaine County couple who've been trying to sell their property in Bellevue since last fall. The Johnson family, well, they've lived on the property since 1977. They bought it thinking it was a nice place to raise kids. But now they think their property might not be suited for a young family. But maybe, I don't know, a millionaire, maybe a billionaire, maybe one who's attending the Allen and Company conference. You know, that annual media finance shindig in Sun Valley that brings in well-known players with really thick wallets. But how to get their attention? Well, here's Katya Stepovic.
We get a lot of attention from the road. We get a lot of phone calls from the signs, and we get a lot of attention from the MLS.
Located about 20 minutes from Sun Valley, a hop, skip, and a jump from the Friedman Memorial Airport in Bellevue, Idaho, this 286-acre lot is looking for a new owner, but it's been a struggle to find the right fit.
But we're not getting the right kind of attention simply because it's a very large piece of property. And most of the people who call are looking for like a single family home.
So when Carl and Heather Johnston saw that the Allen and Company conference was back on this year, they decided they needed to get the attention from the conference attendees.
They've called it Summer Camp for Billionaires. Basically, most of the world's wealthiest people will fly in and go to this conference, and they'll spend about a week in Sun Valley. My husband and I were discussing whether or not we should just stand on the side of the road outside of the executive terminal.
But they decided that would be a little too hot. So the couple, who are also realtors, went about their daily errands, and buying some paint to touch up the roof was one of them.
And I thought, well, wait a minute. If we're going to paint our roof, it'd be great to paint a sign on our roof and get some attention from these jets that are flying in.
And that's how, after 9 hours and 2 days later, their roof looks like this.
We're just trying to think outside the box, try to get attention. The one thing that all these jets come in is they come in very close to over the top of our house, and they take off over the top of our house when they leave. So I thought it was a great idea to try to hopefully get them looking out their window and read and call us.
Great location, huge property, so you're probably wondering,
what are you guys listing it at?
Our listing price is $15 million.
It's a big price tag, but it's a lot of property, a lot of water, and a lot of history.
The couple says their property is part of a historic mine called the Minimore Mine that produced lead and silver of high values dating back to the 1800s.
Greatest thing about being an old mine is the property taxes are really, really low. Some of the claims cost us 7 cents a year in taxes.
And also another hot commodity.
The water rights are the bulk of this property. We have 300 inches of water with a priority date of August 1882. And right now, with water being what it is, that is the price of water per inch. Essentially, we're giving the land away for free.
The couple admits the water's impact on the price tag is part of the problem. Heather says a lot of people would like to buy the water alone and completely strip it from the land. But both Carl and Heather say it's an all or nothing deal, and they hope their new attempt to spark buyer interest is a successful one.
The valley has changed around us, and we acknowledge that and we welcome it. And it's time for us to maybe go figure out what our dream is.
Well, Katya, I have a question for you about this. So $15 million for the entire plot. They've been there since 1977. Most people are now trying to get into Idaho. Why are they trying to get out?
Well, absolutely. And like you mentioned earlier, Carl grew up on the property and the couple raised their children there. So they say they're just ready for a new adventure as both of their kids will be leaving for college within the next year. And they also say that the Wood River Valley is not necessarily a place that guarantees their children a future, at least financially. Brian?
You mentioned that $15 million. It's about $52,000 an acre for those 286. So a little bit above market, but right now, who knows what that market looks like. All right, thank you very much, Katya. In the early 80s, an Idaho man was sentenced to die for a crime he didn't commit. It took nearly 20 years to overturn that death sentence, and another 20 to get compensated by the state. As always, the text line is open. The number, 208-321-5614. Send us your thoughts about today's show, and we might read yours coming up at the end of it. Be sure to include the hashtag the 208. Oh yeah, and don't forget your name. There are 8 people on Idaho's death row right now. It's a sentence where for 23 hours a day, you sit in your cell. You may get an hour out for exercise, maybe a walk to the shower, maybe a meeting with a lawyer or a doctor. That was Charles Fain's life for nearly 2 decades. In February 1982, 9-year-old Darylyn Johnson was on her way to school in Nampa when she went missing. She was found dead 3 days later near the Snake River. She had been raped. Detectives used hairs found on the little girl to convince a jury Charles Fain was the man who did it. He was sentenced to die in March of 1984. Well, that hair is what also eventually set Mr. Fain free. A decade later, DNA tests proved those hairs did not belong to Fain. So on July 6th, 2001, a judge signed an order setting aside Fain's conviction. It was the first time in Idaho history DNA evidence voided a death sentence. This day, 2 decades ago, Charles Fain was no longer a death row inmate.
It appears we now have a kidnapping and a homicide.
It was a crime that shocked a community. On February 24th, 1982, 9-year-old Darylyn Johnson never made it to school. Neighbors launched an all-out search, and 3 days later, 2 fishermen found her body in a ditch near the Snake River. 1 year after that, police arrested Charles Fain.
I personally am convinced that this gentleman committed the crimes that we've charged him with.
At Fain's trial, prosecutor Richard Harris was sure he had his man.
The evidence is more than sufficient legally for the jury to reach the verdict that they did.
The verdict was guilty, and Fain was to pay with his life. But now the marvels of modern science have turned it all around and may turn Fain loose.
The DNA testing shows that pubic hairs recovered from the undergarment and sock of the victim are not the hairs of defendant Charles Fain.
6 days later, Fain spoke to KTVB's Lee McGuire from prison, off death row for the first time in nearly 2 decades.
I don't want to blame anybody. It's over with, and so I just think you ought to just move on past all that. It's a new day now, and get on with the future.
Fain says he first heard about DNA testing back in 1985. At that point, he said he wanted Canyon County to take a second look at his case, but it wasn't until last year that he and his lawyer were able to get that evidence tested again.
In fact, about a year ago, I was living in cell 12, and they moved me down to cell 6. And I told the guard who's moved me down there, I said, they're starting to do DNA testing in my case. And I said, this may be my last cell move. Next move I make might be out to the streets.
Well, it wasn't a clear-cut, well, he's innocent, let's just let him go kind of thing. Prosecutors had a choice to make, to either retry Charles Fain after vacating that sentence or not, and they didn't. Fain was released from prison August 23, 2001. That same DNA evidence was used to link David Dalrymple to the crime in May of 2020. Dalrymple was already serving 20 years to life in prison for a lewd and lascivious conviction from 2004. Canyon County prosecutors were expected to charge Dalrymple for Darylyn's rape and death last summer. We asked today whether that warrant had been issued, but we have yet to hear back. For his 17 years served on death row, Fain said he was given a new set of clothes when he walked out. That's it. It took another 20 years for any sort of compensation for his wrongful conviction. He was given nearly $1.4 million last month from the state of Idaho. In a couple years, the Navy's newest submarine will hit the water, named after the Gem State. And this week, some of the crew members are getting their first look at the Gem State and their first crack at saying Kooski. Well, here's your crack at getting involved in the show. Pull out your phone and send us a text message. The number, 208-321-5614. But keep this in mind. We do read everything. Only a few, though, get to be read out loud at the end of the show. So make sure you include your name and the hashtag, the 208. The latest USS Idaho has been under construction for nearly 2 years. It will be a Virginia-class nuclear-powered attack submarine. When it's completed, which is expected to be next summer, when they will christen her and then commission her into active service in 2023, it will be the first Navy ship to be named for the gem state in more than a century. The Gem of the Fleet, they'll call it. To commemorate the construction, there's been a contingent of the sub's crew taking a tour of Idaho the last week. There's actually 3 members of the 135-member crew that are from Idaho. And their tour started in Boise, went east to Idaho Falls for a visit of the Idaho National Laboratory. I mean, they are a nuclear submarine after all. They dropped into Pocatello, back up to Idaho Falls, jumped over to Twin Falls, then to Nampa, and today, back to Boise. Since Wednesday, they've been learning all about the state for which they will sail under, to get to know Idaho and establish a bond between the citizens and sailors. So we wanted to meet these sailors and find out what they have gathered in just 6 days.
Will Johnson, Information System Technician, First Class.
So when you knew you were being assigned to the USS Idaho, first thing that popped in your mind?
The first thing that popped into my mind was I was really excited because it was a pre-commissioned unit, and not a lot of submariners actually get a chance to be a part of pre-commissioned units.
Master Chief David Pope.
You're from Portland.
I am.
You've seen Idaho from a distance.
I have.
You've been that close.
Yes.
What did you
I believe I lost a fishing lure in Idaho once.
My name is Andrew Linhart, Idaho native. I am an electrician's mate, nuclear first class, aboard the PCU Idaho.
So as one of the 3 native Idahoans on this crew, have you kind of had to explain to everybody else what Idaho is all about?
I have. It's been a lot of PowerPoints, a lot of demonstrations, pictures, videos, a lot of talking to them. I've become almost a tour guide.
How many times have you heard potatoes when you're trying to explain?
Daily, many times daily.
What did you know about Idaho before you got here?
Before, I knew that Idaho had potatoes. I knew the Smurf turf.
As Chief Petty Officers, we work a lot with each other. There's no question that somebody can ask me that I can't have an answer to within minutes.
Cool. I've got some questions for you then.
Sure.
I'm gonna get a lot of flack if I mess these up, so you gotta bring my A game.
State flower.
The Syringa.
Syringa, nice. State horse.
State horse is the Appaloosa.
Appaloosa.
The Appaloosa?
Good one. The state amphibian.
No, I don't know that.
Don't know that. I didn't know we had one either until today, so it's okay.
I believe maybe a type of salamander, but I'm not sure
Nailed it.
which one.
Idaho giant salamander.
Ah.
Did you know that we have a state vegetable?
The state vegetable, would it be the sugar beet?
No. The potato.
The potato? I didn't. I thought it would have been obvious.
State dance.
Believe that is.
Let's go with the do-si-do.
Is it square dance?
You got it. So you've been to a couple of these spaces, but here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna have you say these names, okay?
Yes.
So this is the first one here. What is that?
Boise.
Boise.
Not to be confused by people who say it Boise, it is Boise.
There's that one. How about that one?
Kuna.
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 This one is
Atoll.
Atoll.
I'm gonna say Athol or Athol.
one more time.
Atoll?
Close. It's Athol.
Atoll.
This one's gonna be a tough one right here. How about that? Give it a shot.
Wapey.
Let's go with Wapey.
So Weep?
No.
Weepy?
Weipe.
Weipe.
So if I were to say, let it be.
I would say forever.
Esto Perpetua. Yeah, they have a ship cheer. There are a lot of native Idahoans who would have struggled with those, I promise you, but thank you very much for playing along. And what these sailors also learned, and what you may also not know, is Idaho's long historic connection to the Navy. I know we're a landlocked state, but there were 4 other USS Idahos over the years. The last one, a New Mexico-class battleship commissioned in 1919. Then there's the Farragut Naval Training Station, built in 1942 on the shores of Lake Pend Oreille, near the town of the aforementioned Athol, and at that time was the largest city in Idaho. Lake Pend Oreille, by the way, is home to the Navy's Acoustic Research Detachment and called the most valuable body of water for the Navy. It's going to cost $2.6 billion, by the way, to build this submarine, and it should serve for 3 decades. Again, we want to thank those sailors for their service and having some fun with us today.